What's up, everybody? Welcome to Genesis Mosaic Live. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good. You guys just moved into a new house. Doesn't look sweet? Yeah. Pretty sweet. Yeah, you're welcome. I just want everybody to know so they can congratulate you because that's pretty exciting.
I think that's a halo over his head.
Just as an angel, that is for sure. Well, students, parents, volunteers, thanks for jumping on tonight. We're excited you guys are with us. What is this, our fourth time doing this? I think, right? This has been pretty fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Marcilyn, I think you're still muted. There it is. Hey, but thanks for joining us tonight. Go ahead and drop your name and your campus in the comments section. We want to know where you're from, where you're repping, and if you're making mac and cheese or not. I saw somebody come through and let us know they were making some mac and cheese over there. So that's pretty awesome. You guys all know the rules if you've been here before. Don't be a troll. No spamming in the comments. Go ahead and make sure you subscribe to our channel as well. You're going to want to turn on notifications so that every time we come on or post a video, you get a heads up that is happening. A couple other kind of reminders for you tonight, or just some ways to help you navigate through our Genesis Mosaic Live tonight. We do want comments from you. We want feedback from you guys. We want engagement with you. So be sure to be using the comment section, but use it well. And if you happen to be watching and the comments get a little bit too much for you, maybe they're distracting to you, you can go into theater mode on your settings and it'll go full screen and you can quiet those comments. And so you can just focus on what's being said. So if those become too much for you, feel free to do that. If you need some instructions on how to do that, hit us up in the chat and we'll walk you through doing that. It might not be a bad idea too to grab something to take notes on. We've obviously changed a little bit of how we're doing teaching and doing a little bit more conversational. So sometimes that can be a little bit harder to follow than just one voice kind of leading you. So now might be a great time for you to break out a journal or even the notes thing on your phone and record some thoughts there as we jump in tonight. But our first order of business. You ready for this, you guys?
So ready
for this. All right. If for the rest of your time in isolation, you can only eat the last thing that you ate, what would your meal be for the rest of your time in isolation? Students, we want to hear from you in the chat section. Pastors, I want to throw it around the horn and hear from you guys. What is the last thing that you ate that will now be the only thing you can eat for the rest of our time in shelter in place? Gus, what you got?
Yeah, I got strawberry ice cream.
Yes.
With a sugar cone.
That's awesome. Man, I love it.
That's bad.
Boy. That's too good.
Is this like the last meal or the last food I ate then becomes my meal?
The last thing you ate, the last calorie you consumed in food form. That's it. What's it going to be, James?
Boring old pretzels. Man, I ruined it. I had lose for lunch, Illuminati. So I would have been sitting pretty, but then I ate pretzels. Shoot.
That would have been awesome.
I knew that was an impulse decision.
Let down.
Bacon wrapped meatloaf on the comments. Ooh,
bacon wrapped meatloaf. Wow. An invitation to that house for dinner.
That was my boy Alex.
For me, I got Mott's and of course white cheddar popcorn.
Oh, that's the stinky popcorn.
White cheddar popcorn. Good.
No way, man. That stuff is so good.
It's the best popcorn.
How many bags of fruit snacks do you eat in a day? Because I'm pretty sure every time I see you, you're
Actually, I've been on this box of Mott's for about 3 days now.
This box? You've been on a box for 3 days. And you feel like that's good. That's a good...
Hey, I cut down. There used to be a box a day, so I'm just saying.
Oh my goodness, that's a lot of fruit snacks, man. I don't think that actually counts as a serving of fruit either. I'm pretty sure.
Not a chance.
Thanks.
Nope.
That's awesome. Marcilyn, what about you?
Yeah, this question's hard because part of me is like, I should go run and eat something healthy because then like, wow, look at me go and I'm super healthy. But then it's also like, you want to eat the last thing that you ate. That's something you really like because now this is all you get to eat forever.
That's right.
But I had a Twix, so I'm having candy
Yes.
Forever.
Forever. I hope not forever. My goodness.
If I had to eat a Twix for every meal, it would feel like forever no matter how long it was.
This is true. We had frozen pizza for dinner, so we'd be rocking Jack's frozen pizza. I feel like I'd be pretty okay. So
wow.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff coming through. Oh, hey, Just one of our students is concerned about the number of fruit snacks you're eating. So you should definitely keep us posted on how that's going.
Clearly, my wife was too, so don't worry about it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, we love having fun with you guys. That's part of why we come up with these goofy questions to start off with the night. And so if you've got you want to answer that, feel free to do that now. What's the last meal you had that you're now going to be eating for the rest of your time in isolation? But we also do have content planned for you guys tonight. And so as we did last week, we're going to do this in a discussion format. We're going to talk about a topic that's really been decided on based on questions that you guys have submitted. And so we have a text number in the description of this video. If you've got a question you'd love for us to consider answering as a part of Genesis and Mosaic Live over the next few weeks, go ahead and text us that question. We'll use that to come up with content going forward. Last week, we kind of shared the responsibility between a couple of voices on this call to help it track a little bit easier for you. So tonight we get to hear mostly from Pastor Jus and Pastor Marcilyn. We're going to be talking about evangelism tonight, really. So last week we sort of talked about forming and kind of cultivating, fostering, caring for our own personal relationship with Jesus and living that out in the context around other believers. Tonight, what we're talking about is what does it look like to share our faith with people who don't know Jesus, maybe who don't have a relationship with Jesus, or who might even be in opposition to us or to a relationship with Jesus in general. And so again, this content was formed by questions that you guys submitted. And so the very first question we want to kind of take a swing at tonight is, how do you talk to your friends about God without sounding dumb? Now, I think that's a question we've probably all asked at one point or another in different relationships and situations. How do we talk to our friends about Jesus, about God, without sounding dumb? Pastor Marcilyn, why don't you jump in and kind of start walking us through this question?
Yeah, this is such a good and hard question because I think it's something we've all thought and felt, regardless of whether or not that's, the students might look at us and say, well, you guys are pastors, you might not feel that way. And but believe it or not, I think there's literally not a person on earth that hasn't felt this kind of tension of, when I talk about my faith, I want to make sure that I sound like I know what I'm talking about. And I don't want to come across as either like I don't know what I believe, because, we're passionate about our faith, we're passionate about what Jesus has done in our lives. And so there's this tension. I think even asking this question was really bold of that student, because they were recognizing, like, I can't be the only one that feels this way, and you're not. Like, we all have this tension of, we want to share our faith, we want to share about the amazing things that Jesus has done in our lives, and yet there's this tension of, I don't know how that person is going to respond. I don't want to say the wrong things. I want to make sure I say the right things, and I don't want to make it seem like I don't know what I'm talking about. And so I think this is a great question. I think there's a lot to it when we talk about even what's our motivation in talking about our faith. And so it's a great question. I think we're going to have a lot to say about that tonight, but I just want to say, as you guys think about that, I'm sure you've thought about situations that you've been in where you have been trying to share your faith, and you have those same types of insecurities or moments where you're like, oh gosh, I'm not going to say anything because I don't know what to say. And so hopefully tonight we can kind of dive into where our heart is at in that, and how to navigate those moments when we find ourselves where we have that kind of like sinking feeling when we get nervous and we start to think, oh gosh, I don't know what I'm going to say here, so I'm just either going to not say anything, or you kind of stumble through it and then you look back and you're like, oh man, I don't know what I just did. So I'm excited to hear how we dive into this tonight. Just what are your thoughts when you hear this question?
Yeah, straight to it. I love what you said, Marcilyn. I think something to kind of ride on the coattail of that is just essentially, guys, we have been given one of the greatest gifts of all, and that's the gift of the Holy Spirit. And when we're in moments like that of fear and intrepidation, or maybe I don't know what I'm supposed to talk about, I don't know what I'd say, or the moment it's kind of choky, you kind of choking up, getting that big lump in your throat. You got to just trust that God is there with you and that he will guide you through that. And as a matter of fact, I got a passage that we're going to get to a little bit later. But yeah, God is there with you through it all. Through it all, he's there with you. So he got you.
Yeah, I think some of the things that I think about too when I'm in those environments is the context of that environment. Like we don't know what the student necessarily was talking about, but there's a lot of different environments where we think about talking about our faith. And I think that the context is really important here, because if we think about, if we're in a setting where we're trying to share our faith with somebody out of the blue that we don't even know, or whether it's a friend who's been asking questions, or if it's somebody who's maybe even challenging our faith and we feel the need to defend it. And I think in all those settings, our response looks different, and what our motivation is for wanting to share it too. Because I think we all, when we're passionate about something, we have a tendency to want to defend it and make it look really good and shape it in a way that makes it sound ideal. And so even checking our own heart motivation when we are sharing our faith of, am I doing this because I feel the need to prove to them that this is something that they should believe or that they should want? Or am I sharing this because Jesus has changed my life? He's given me a hope and a future that I didn't have on my own before this. And so how can I let that show in my words and in my actions to the people around me? And so I think context is important too. What setting are you in as you're sharing your faith?
Yeah. There's this Bible verse that comes to mind, a couple of scriptures that come to mind, and they're actually in Exodus. I just want to read this to you, students, real quick, and check this out, right? So it's Exodus chapter 4, and it starts at verse 10, and it says this: Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon your servant, Lord. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant. I am slow of speech and tongue." So Moses basically highlighting that he has a speech impediment, y'all. Moses, one of the greatest leaders of all. And the Lord said to him, who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or make them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, and I will help you speak and will teach you what to say. And I think that's something that you have to trust. Look, even on the first time, the way you try to speak to your friends, the beautiful thing about this is you get better with it over the course of time. This thing is a process, and God is all about stretching you and helping you grow in your faith. It may be very challenging for you to be able to have that conversation for the first time, but guess what? You trying is a seed of faith that you're planting into the ground of your spirituality, and for you to come more and more alive and evangelizing, as Josh highlighted before, to your friends about the goodness of God. There are a number of ways that your friends are going to see you put God on display. Speech is one, but also how you live it out. And so to Marcilyn's point, yes, motivation is key. Make sure you back up what you say. But again, trust that God is going to lead you and that he has you.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, let's kind of capture some of what we talked about already, so we can kind of hopefully make it something our students can walk away with, right? So we talked about recognizing our motivation and our intent. Why are we looking to share our faith? And there are hundreds of great reasons why we should share our faith, right? We want to make sure that we're kind of considering that in the context of where we're at. And you guys both touched on the topic of not just talking about our faith, though we do want to make sure we answer that question, but living out our faith, right? And I think sometimes that's sort of on the end of, I don't want to sound dumb, also might be, I don't want to be called a hypocrite. Like what if my life doesn't actually reflect this faith that I say that I have, or doesn't reflect what people think it should look like because I say that I have a faith in Jesus? So those two things are important for us to understand: my intent and motivation, and how is my life reflecting the faith that I'm proclaiming, right? So those are just good things for our students to kind of grab onto and think about. But as we consider this question, there's definitely a point of going, there is a moment where I need to talk to my friends about Jesus. I need to talk to them about my faith and what God has done in my life, and really what God may want to do in their life, or what he can do in their life. So any ideas, any kind of thoughts, or even really practical ways that our students can go about having those faith conversations with their friends, with maybe their teachers, their peers, family members, et cetera?
Yeah, I think for me, the easiest avenue to sharing my faith, or even like what I believe with others, is connecting with them and sharing my story. And so, you know, we share our faith because Jesus offered us a gift that saved us and changed us. And so it's something that we want to offer others, but it's not something that we can just talk through without making it personal. And so I think the easiest way for me to connect with people is saying, you know, when they're sharing about things that they've experienced in their life, or when they're sharing about moments of brokenness, that's when I can say, oh man, like I also have experienced seasons of brokenness and heartache. And here's how Jesus has offered me hope in the midst of those things. And here's how God has saved me and turned my life from moments of, you know, trying to please myself in other areas and seeking out things that would offer me fulfillment that haven't. And so I think personal stories of life change is the best and easiest way, because it's your story. People are going to respect that, and they can't argue that, because it's the story of how Jesus saved and transformed you. And so I always try and go in with that personal story, because it connects you with another human being. You always relate when you share stories, and when you hear about someone's life and you can steward that well and you can share about your life, it builds a connection, and then they can see firsthand into the life that Jesus transforms within you.
Yeah. Jus and the other pastors, they want to hear from you, but students, we'd love your input on this as well. What things have you done in sharing your faith with your friends? Any practical tips that you can offer to the other folks? We got over 250 people on here right now who are looking for, how do I share my faith with my friends? So if you've had success in that, or you've seen God bless some of those efforts, we'd love to hear from you. But Jus, go for it, man.
Yeah, I would say a really practical way, and probably a way that we overlook oftentimes, is actually pray for your friend. Just pray for them. Prayer is in itself a conversation between you and God. But imagine whenever you involve your friend in that, and they get to hear how you take their story, the thing that they share with you, that moment of transparency and authenticity, they share that with you, and now you turn that towards God and you pray with them to God. Imagine the impact that will have on your friends. So I think a really practical way for you to even begin the conversation, let the first conversation that you have, if I can encourage you, let the first conversation that you have with your friend be redirected in prayer. Don't think about the moment. Don't think about what to say in it. Just let the Lord use you in that moment. And prayer is something that you guys do anyway. It's a part of your day already. So that would be my advice. That's a very practical suggestion.
And I feel like something important to note here too is, I think as believers, we tend to feel this responsibility to convince people and to make sure that they get it or that they believe. And we kind of cling tight and feel this need to say all the right things. And if I don't say the right things, then I'll embarrass myself and they'll never believe in God. And then that's on me. And I think, like you said, Jus, like, yes, the first thing that we should do is pray, because we don't bring about life change, right? Like that is not on us. It's not our job to convince people that Jesus can transform. Like he does that. He's the one who works. He's the one who changes. And so I think just releasing that control too, like you don't need to feel that pressure of, if I don't say exactly right things, that my friends won't ever know Jesus. Like Jesus is at work. He's in the work by us stumbling over our words. He used Moses, even though he couldn't speak well. And so I think that pressure needs to be recognized and released too. Like Jesus is more powerful than our ability to articulate something to our friends at any given moment.
Something that's so profound to me that I've been saying it's been in my language lately is, God is bigger than blank. And what I'm saying by that is, God is bigger than the thing that I feel like I can dedicate all my energy to and care about. So if it is praying for my friend, God is bigger than me feeling like I'm going to choke in a moment. God can use that choke moment to increase his power, increase his knowledge in my friend. So guys, no matter what, even if you do choke, even if you feel like you do choke, God uses the hiccups of the world to tell some of the greatest stories. And so just rest in that moment if you can, excuse me.
No, that's good. That's good. We want to kind of not change direction, but sort of continue down this discussion path. But I'd love to pause and see if James or Gus, you got anything to toss into this part of the conversation before we keep going?
Yeah, I actually saw a really good question/comment is, how do I share my faith in my school to my friends when the environment is not a Christian environment? I think that's a really great question. I think to answer that, it would be one, part of living, being a passionate disciple of Jesus is that you're living a life that's completely different. There's something should be different about your experience before Jesus and then with Jesus. And I think that attracts people to how you are living your life. And I think that that's one of the important ways, actually nonverbal way of expressing your faith, that this should be something dramatically different to your friends of how you're acting, behaving, perspective, et cetera, that should be nonverbal, that will open up these opportunities to talk to them about, why do you behave this way? Why do you react this way? Why don't you react that way? And so that was a really, really good comment and question.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff.
Yeah,
that's good stuff. Go ahead, James.
I was going to say, I think something I like to remember is that God wants people to know him. And so the conversations you're having with your friends about God are not things that like God is against. He wants to know about your faith. He wants them to know about him and his gospel. And I think when you ask God to give you those opportunities, that's something he wants to do. And he wants to give you those chances to have those conversations because he knows the effect it's going to have on your faith too. And so I would say if you're wanting this, like, there's an element of like, I have to be ready to take the opportunity God's giving me, but know that he's going to do that. If you ask him for that, if you're looking for times and opportunities, conversations with your friends, if you're looking for things in their life that are difficult, or a door being opened, a question that they might ask about you or your life or your faith, times that God's going to provide you opportunities. And the thing that I find myself needing to pray more for is, God, give me the courage to take that opportunity and to experience what it looks like to believe that you're going to use this and to have faith in you, even when I'm not about what I'm about to say, or if I'm scared, or if I'm uncomfortable. God, I know that you're going to use it. And so give you that courage to do that.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff, you guys. I want to cheat a little bit here because we sort of have a 2-part question. And so I'm going to do my best to just really quickly answer the first part so we can get to the second one, because I think there's a lot of maybe confusion that revolves around this. So one of the questions is, how do you get to know others and love them well, people that are not following God in terms of certain aspects of life, the way that they live their life? And so I think the really quick response to that would be just to get to know them, right? Like, surround yourself with those people. And so like, we all go, like, again, that sounds oversimplistic, and I don't mean to make light of that, right? But it's because I realize that can be really difficult, especially for folks who have been raised in the church their whole life, and like the entire community of people they find themselves in are Christians. And we're pastors, for goodness sake, right? The majority of the people in our lives love Jesus and walk with him well, right? And so sometimes there's a struggle to go out and find people who don't live that way. I think for our students, it's probably easier, just in the sense that they go to public schools, or they go to extracurriculars, or they have jobs in spaces where they have people in their lives who are not believers. And so some of it is just leaning in, right? And beginning to get to know those people, being real, being authentic, having conversations about life in general, sharing stories, etc. But then, so I hope that's helpful, is maybe just kind of jumping in and showing interest in those individuals and investing in their life like you would anybody else, I think, is the simple answer to that. There's certainly more, and I'd encourage you guys to talk about that question in your guys' community groups coming up later tonight or later this week. Hopefully you got a URL from your leader so you can join your Zoom or Google Hangout group later tonight or later on this week to continue the topic of talking about evangelism. But what we want to ask, there's a follow-up question this I think is really good. How do we set up proper boundaries when developing relationships with people who don't love Jesus, with people who might not be living a life that reflects a love for Christ? And we had some conversation about this the other day that lasted a really long time. And I think part of that is because of how sometimes difficult it can be to figure out how to draw those boundaries. And so, Jus, Marcilyn, would love to hear from you guys, your thoughts on that. Why don't we start with you, Pastor Jus?
Yeah, I think the very simple thing to do is know where I think it's important that you articulate where it is that you stand on all things, especially on the things that you are aware that your friend is a part of. By now, when you establish your friendship, chances are you establish a friendship because y'all have things in common. And if there are things that you know they condone, that they do, that are anti for what you believe, then you know that that's a conversation that you need to have up front. Now, if it's not a conversation that you're not having up front, then I'm going to submit this to you. Can you blame them for putting you in a position that you feel awkward in if you're not transparent up front? So you need to have these boundaries set upfront so that your friends know that, hey, this is where you are. This is where I stand on it. And then this is where you stand on the situation. And be clear. Again, Marcilyn made the point earlier, being transparent and being authentic. It opens up doors and wonders for you and your friends.
Yeah. Good point.
I think this is a really hard question because I know as a Christian, I want a do and don't checklist, right? Like I want to know exactly how to behave in what environments and what I should do and what I shouldn't do. And I don't like gray areas. And if you guys as youth pastors could just tell me as a Christian in school, don't do these things and do these things, that'd be great. And that'd be super helpful. I even remember as a high school student and wanting to be a good friend and wanting to be an example, but then being like, okay, but these people don't do the things I agree with. So does that mean I can't be friends with them? Like it's a confusing place to be. And even as an adult, I think it's hard to say, okay, if I am friends with these people, does that mean I approve of their behavior? Does this mean that I should not be friends with them? Like it's a confusing world. And so students, we hear this question. We know that this is a place of you saying, hey, I want to live for Jesus and I want to know how to do that in these environments. And how do I set up boundaries to live for Jesus while still engaging in the world that he's called me to? And so I get it. We want to talk through this, but like Josh said, we talked about this for a really long time because there is no checklist. There's no white and, black and white answer of what is right and what isn't. There's a lot of gray areas where Christ calls us to work out our faith and learn in those environments. And so students, I'm sorry if this is frustrating for you, but know that we're trying to do our best to talk through, even as adults, what it looks like to set up boundaries to live for Jesus in healthy ways.
Another thing that I would say to that point is simply this. Think on the byproduct. So if I go to this party, when I leave here, when I get home, is this going to help me spiritually? Is it going to help me mentally? Is it helping me socially? Like think of what's the end goal? And I think that's one thing that you have to think through as you talk about boundaries and things like that. What is the end goal? What are you trying to achieve? What is this going to do to you, not only externally, but internally? And as you are a believer in a Christian, your morals and your beliefs are set on a different foundation. And so if it's anything that opposes the truth if it's anything that would even compromise the truth of who Jesus is and the light that you have to give away to other people, then it's probably a boundary that you need to set in stone that I can't go to this party. It's not that I don't want to hang out and be with you or do these things with you, have these conversations. It's a simple fact. The way it's going to make me look when I've just had this conversation with another friend about Jesus is the way. And I'm going over here and there's nothing but drinking over here. Like a lot of it is normal morality, but then a lot of it is truly knowing like what is good for you and what situations you're putting yourself in the spiritual context, in that context as well. So think of the byproduct. What is it? How is it going to set you up in the aftermath, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's good.
Makes sense. And I think there's twofold there is, yes, you want to think about how are you protecting yourself spiritually, but then I think a lot of our students would say, well, I'm in those environments because I want to share Jesus with those people. If I just avoid that, then I'm not actually being the light of the world to the people. And so, I think like it's worth noting that regardless of whoever is around us, like we're not saying when we talk about boundaries, we're not saying, shut people out or be exclusive or be rude or demeaning of someone's life or condemning of their lifestyle. I think something that we had talked about is understanding that as believers, we're called to live set apart, right? We talked about this. We're called to live holy.
Yes.
But if someone isn't a believer, if they haven't been transformed by Jesus, if they haven't been given a reason to live set apart, they're not going to get it. They're not going to live by the same moral guidelines that you do because they haven't experienced the freedom of bondage and sin and new life. And so we can't go at these people being like, well, you're a terrible person because you do these things and I don't. So I'm going to dismiss myself because it's not good for me. And so I think there's a tension there of like, yes, you need to pursue Jesus and run after Jesus with all you can. But then also, how are we going to love others well, even the people that do things that we don't do? And so that tension of how do you engage with, love well, and serve those individuals who are engaged in activities that maybe we would say aren't what's best for my spiritual life.
And when you love them well, when you serve them well, you're certainly creating inroads into their life to be able to, at some point when God prompts you and creates those spaces, to share your story, to talk about his goodness, to talk about what a relationship with Jesus looks like. So I think those are really good points. Pastor James and Pastor Gus dropped some of their thoughts in the comments a little bit, or kind of going back and forth with you guys to check out what they've got to say. I think a great question that Pastor Gus posed was, is it Christ exalting? Is this environment that I find myself in, does this bring glory to Jesus? And I think it's a great question for us to ask as we try to live lives worthy of the gospel, right? That's what we want to do really, really well. So we get it, you guys. This is a tough question, but I think what's really important is taking away a couple of things. One, living out your faith. The way that you live your life matters when it comes to sharing your faith, to talking about your faith with other people. Trusting that God is at work within you. If you have surrendered your life to Jesus, God's Holy Spirit lives inside of you. And God's Spirit will be giving you the words, giving you the boldness, giving you what you need in those moments. That's really important. And finally, when it comes to creating good and healthy boundaries, I think prayer is a huge part of that. Asking God for wisdom in those spaces and making sure that we're not cutting people out of our lives just because of some of the decisions they might be making, right? If there's something we disagree with that lives a life different than us, doesn't mean we have to cut them out. I mean, there are people in my life who I disagree with about hundreds of things, and yet we still are friends, right? We still have a relationship. And so we just have to figure out and trust that God is going to lead us in those spaces as we pray and pray and pray and seek lots of counsel. That's where your community groups, your community group leaders, us as your pastors would love to be a resource for you guys as you're navigating life. So I hope this conversation about evangelism was helpful for you. We recognize we did not answer these questions completely. That's not what we set out to do. We recognize that you guys are going to continue this conversation. And really, you guys, this is a lifelong thing. As we try to follow Jesus well, you will be doing this for the rest of your life. And so we want to really set you guys up with some wisdom and some great questions to ask and some things to consider as you grow as passionate disciples of Jesus for belonging, growing, serving, and reaching. And we love that. We hope you guys were blessed by this. We also want to have some fun with you, right? We hope that was fun, but we want to have some other fun with you. And so we're going to play a little game with you guys here. I'm going to throw it over to Pastor Gus, and he's going to talk us through our Easter themed game. So Pastor Gus, what you got?
Absolutely. All right. Hopefully you guys can see this, but can you see my screen?
Can.
Yeah, right. All right. So how much do you know about Easter? And so I'm going to be asking you a couple of questions here. We're going to take a little poll of what you think the answer might be. Drop your answer on the comments there, and we're going to start off. So here we go. How many chocolate eggs are produced each year for Easter? What do you guys think?
Oh, man.
90.
Wow.
I'm going 120. 120.
Yeah. I think
120?
Or also.
Okay. A lot of 120 million. What do you think, Jus? You said 90?
Yeah.
Man, you were spot on. You were spot on. Good job.
Done. How many fruit snacks are produced for Easter every year? That's what Justin was saying.
All right, next question. When and where was the first Easter sunrise service? Oh,
shoot.
And we've got people getting prizes on this too, right, Gus?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. First person to answer the right answer
on this one,
prize.
There we go.
Yeah. Right? We're giving that away for every single one.
Let's do it. I love it.
They get chocolate bunnies, I think.
Those answers are going
that's fun.
super fast.
1492, the New World. 1732, Germany. 1896, Greece. 1901, Orlando. What do you guys think? Give me a shout out here.
I'm saying
say what?
Germany.
Yeah, me too. Germany.
We got two for Germany, right. Joss.
Yeah.
Greece.
Greece. I'm gonna say Germany.
All right, we got three for Germany. And you guys are absolutely right. Germany.
Yeah.
Go.
Oh, man. I just guessed Greece because I've been there. That's all.
All right, here we go. Which nation consumes the most candy per person each year? It has to be the USA.
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 Number one.
Oh, man.
What do you guys think?
Man.
I'm saying US.
All right.
I think if US, I feel like Canada could be a dark horse.
Okay, Canada for James. Josh?
Yeah, USA too.
USA. Just.
I know it's the USA, but I'm going with England. I know it's USA though.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jus. I think it is.
Look at this!
No,
Wow.
It's crazy.
Man. Dude.
They eat 2
That is a lot
pounds.
of candy.
That is
That's
3
a lot.
pounds of candy, dude.
That's a lot of candy.
All right, here we go.
Oh.
After Easter, which day has the highest church attendance? Mother's Day, daylight savings, Grandma's birthday, Christmas.
Everybody knows it's Mother's Day.
Yeah, Mother's Day.
Mother's Day? Marcilyn
saying
says
No, it's
Christmas.
Christmas. It's Christmas and Mother's Day.
And
third.
then Mother's Day. Yeah.
I don't know. Mama be wanting you in church. In
Yeah,
the
Mother's
South.
Day.
Mama wants you going to church.
Mother's Day or Christmas.
The whole family gonna get an Easter suit.
What is it, Gus? What is it?
It is Christmas.
Yes.
Good job, Marcilyn.
That's right.
Mother's Day is the next most attended.
Yeah, it's third.
Obviously.
Okay. Here we go. How many
Have you
jelly
seen the
beans?
teeth in England? Somebody asked that about the candy.
That's why they need dentists.
If you want to be a dentist, England is the place to start your
Oh,
business.
man.
I'm just saying.
All right. How many jelly beans are produced each year for Easter? It's a
Oh,
lot.
man.
Like specific jelly beans?
I'm going to say 7. I'm going to say 7 bill.
7
Do they really
billion.
count this?
Billion.
Someone out there is out there
That's kind
counting
of steep.
jelly
One,
beans.
Individual jelly beans.
two,
They're counting
That's
as
a
they
lot.
go.
Trace.
Wait,
I
you
think
mean
7's right.
are we talking
right.
individual jelly beans or like the packs that they come in? Like how
It's
is
16 billion, brother.
Jeez.
That's crazy.
16 billion.
So many
Wow.
jelly beans.
That's crazy.
All right, here we go. You guys ready?
So good.
Yeah.
What is the traditional reply to "He is risen" on Easter?
Cash me outside.
Cash me outside.
Oh man.
Come on, give me one. You guys are pastors.
For
Number one.
Jesus.
Number one.
Number one.
Yeah, number one.
Everyone. He is risen indeed.
Risen
Amen to that.
indeed.
All right. The largest chocolate Easter egg ever made was how big?
I'm going with
14 feet,
34.
24, 34, or 44?
I just keep
34.
thinking of the VeggieTale episode with the giant chocolate.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Rack Shack and Benny, right? That was the.
All
Yeah.
right.
34. Let's go.
All
Ooh.
right.
Yes. Got it.
Here we go. How do we determine the date of Easter each year? It's the third Sunday after the start of daylight. It's voted on every year by the United States Supreme Court. It's the second Sunday after the start of Passover. It's the first Sunday after the first full moon. 1, 2, 3, or 4?
4.
Is it
4.
4?
4, 4, 4. All fours. Look at you guys. Look at you guys.
Vernal equinox.
Okay, here we go. 89% of Americans eat which part of a chocolate bunny first? Tail, ears, feet, the whole thing.
The whole thing.
The ears.
Ears. 1, 2, 3. The ears. Guys are good.
Yeah.
Guys are warming up. Okay, here we go. How long does the traditional season of Easter last? 1 week, 1 month, 50 days until Christmas?
Until Christmas. No, just
1, 2, 3, or 4?
2.
1.
3. We got 3. We got 1. It's 50 days, guys, until Pentecost.
Oh, that
Pentecost.
makes sense.
All right. We got a bonus.
Penta,
one.
5.
This guy is
Anyway.
good. Here we go. All right, here we go. Bonus. How long does it take to make one peep? Which are these little things right here?
Oh, I seen this.
Oh,
in
that's what a
How
peep is?
long
Yeah.
does it make?
Yes.
Like by
No, it's in a
hand
machine.
or in a machine?
It's by a machine.
Oh, they
One
gotta,
peep.
it takes a
The little
long time.
marshmallow
Oh, man.
situation.
They gotta let it harden.
Marshmallow situation.
Come on, take a stab at it, James.
A week.
I'm gonna go.
Oh, man, I hope it's not a
gonna say
week. Gross.
I'm gonna say 10 days. 10 days.
10
I'm gonna
days.
say 5 seconds.
No,
It's Pentecost. 50 days.
What is it?
it's 6 minutes.
6 minutes. Oh, it's so weird. I don't know why it's weird, but it is.
That's
Oh,
it,
man. All right. Well, if you guys got one of those right, I think we're planning on shipping you some Easter candy. So you're going to want to text us at the number below. Give us your address, and we will mail you probably not a full Easter basket, but some Easter candy nonetheless to brighten up your Easter season. Thank you guys so much for jumping on tonight. We hit 300 plus people, so well done, Genesis and Mosaic, for jumping on. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation about evangelism. What does it look like? How do we share our faith with people who don't know Jesus? We pray that your guys' conversation later tonight and later this week is great, is fruitful and encouraging for you. If you haven't gotten a link URL to your Zoom community groups, definitely hit up your leader and say, where's my link at? And make sure you guys jump into those groups again later tonight or later on this week. Subscribe to our channel. Find us on social media. Text us your prayers and any questions you might like us to consider answering on these live calls. You can find that number below. You guys have a fantastic Good Friday and Easter. Make sure you check out our services this weekend. You're actually going to see a handful of your pastors doing announcements and stuff like that on those services. So chime in and check those out. And we hope that you guys have a really awesome Holy Week, remembering and celebrating what Jesus has done for you and the victory that he has claimed for us by raising from the dead. We're excited. We love you guys. We'll see you next week on Genesis and Mosaic Live.
Peace.
Peace.